name is Jill Harris. I'm the voice of Suletta Mercury in Mobile Suit Gundam, the Witch from Mercury, and you are listening to The Gundam Watch.
So, Branson, what did you do for fun out here while you're by yourself for 6 months?
Honestly, Dallas, I don't want to talk about it.
Oh, wow.
That It's okay. I am a human being. I am a human being.
Okay, then.
Can we just talk about the Gundam or something like that? Because yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is the right kind of emotional trauma for a Gundam movie.
Yeah.
General Romeo coming in, begin transmission. Should you accept it now, here's your mission. Take your pilot seat and turn on your television. Logging into the Gundam Watch. What is a Gundam? We're gonna answer that question. From back in the classics to the newer expansion. Explore the lore with Dallas Moore and Branson. Welcome to the Gundam Watch. Moyagare, come and join the Gundam Watch. Moyagare, come and join the Gundam Watch. Come and join the Gundam Watch. Come and join the Gundam Watch. Brought to you by Geek Devotions comes another podcast to keep your feet in motion. Listen in close and see what's all the commotion. Logging into the Gundam Watch. Dallas and Branson bringing the fandom to you with the passion of the veteran instructing the new. We're diving deep, but this ain't Bees, Views, and Reviews. Welcome to the Gundam Watch.
Hello, Gundam fans, and those who like to become Gundam fans. Welcome to the Gundam Watch, part of the Geek Devotions podcast network, or Devoted Geek Network. Network of podcasts are devoted to letting people know that they're loved. So if you don't listen past this moment, know this: we love you, we care about you. There is a plan and a purpose for your life. Do not give up. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us today as we are stranded on this island, because somebody, is a man with enough emotional trauma to actually pilot a mobile suit. Branson, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
For some reason, I thought you were going to introduce me with that introduction. I don't.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, speaking of that voice, the man who shoots out more taco machines than the gun tank has ammo, Mr. John, how are you?
I'm sorry, Bam. I didn't mean to jump in on your intro. It's just with that introduction, I seriously, I was ready.
It's all good. I'm just happy to have friends again. I've been alone on the island for too long.
To be fair, John, the more you watch Gundam, you realize everyone in the pilots thing has some emotional trauma. So it's one of those things. Wait till you get to watch Gundam Zeta. Ooh, depression.
You know, I've actually heard of a mech series that is all about depression.
Evangelion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
and Violet Evergarden.
That too. So, well, we're not talking about either one of those today.
Sorry.
If you guys have missed it, we've been on this island, and Branson's been stranded here. And in order to get off the island, for some reason, we have to watch Doan's Island. Now we watched the show, the original version from 1979, and that was an experience. Two of us came out scarred. The other one, he says he's not, but his happiness is probably a sign of his scarredness. So
that one was talking about me, right?
Yeah, it was.
That one was about you, John.
Okay, you know, I made the assumption the first time and I got burnt, so
that's fair. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing this party train. Branson, what are we looking at today?
Well, let's see. Let me read the description here. After enduring a defensive battle in Jaburo, the Earth Federation forces plan to launch an operation to capture Odessa, the headquarters of Zeon's Earth Attack Force. Amuro and the White Base head to Belfast to resupply before the mission. However, the White Base receives new orders to head to an uninhabited island known as the Island of No Return to wipe out stragglers. Amuro sets out on the island in search of soldiers that were left behind, but instead finds a group of children and a Zaku that shouldn't be there. Losing the Gundam in a battle, Amuro meets a man who calls himself Cucuruz Doan. Uncovering the secrets of the island, can Amuro find the Gundam again and escape safely?
All right, so this is a movie that came out in 2022, and it doesn't sound anything like what we just covered.
There's like little bitty pieces. It's like, oh yeah, they kind of talked about that in the episode that one time.
Yeah,
That's about it.
yeah. This is last episode, Branson. You described the TV show as fan fiction. Is this?
Mhm.
Okay. I'll tell you what. Let's do this.
Okay.
Loading episode expectations.
I'm jumping out the gate first, ladies and gentlemen. My expectation is this is a fan fiction of a fan fiction, but I'm hoping it's actually good.
Yes. Yes.
Branson, what's your expectation?
The fact that they're going back and taking something that was so bad that they wanted to pretend like it didn't exist and they're actually trying to rework it is actually very intriguing to me because a lot of times, especially for some of the movies that we watch on our other podcast, The Bottom Shelf, a fun exercise I like to do is to say, okay, let me take this story that I thought was bad and how would I rewrite it to make it good? You know, like what changes would I make to give it the tone that I think it needs and to make it have the same message but still communicate in a way that I think is more entertaining. It's really fun to do that, by the way, with the Batman movie from Adam West, like to reskin that whole story in a more serious, like Batman '89 tone.
Yeah.
But I digress. So the fact that they're trying to rework it and make it better, I'm intrigued to see how exactly they'll do that because I think that's a fun exercise, and I'm curious as to what changes they would make
That's fair.
to improve upon it. I'm also very excited that this is a full-length movie
Yeah.
instead of just an episode because I think part of what made the episode so disjointed was they had 20 minutes to cover a lot of stuff. And if they had more time to fill in some of these gaps, maybe they could have a more coherent story.
Yeah. Definitely. I want to put this in there before we finish up the expectations and before John gives his, because I think it's something interesting. It may affect John's expectations. The director of it is a cat named let me pull up his name so I can try to read it as terribly as I accidentally will. Yoshikakuzu Yoshiko. That's terrible. I apologize. I bring his name up for this reason for you two guys. This man not only worked on the original Mobile Suit Gundam back in the 70s, so he was involved with, he did 16 episodes of it. So he did 1 through 3, 6 through 7, 9 through 10, 13, 17, 22, 24, several other ones. But he also worked on the sequel series, Zeta Gundam. He also worked on the third series, Mobile Suit Gundam Double Zeta. He worked on the first actual movie that was supposed to end the timeline, Char's Counterattack. He also did the other sequel movie that was supposed to end the timeline, Mobile Suit Gundam F91, which, if you know F91, that may or may not be a good thing. But he is actively also working with the newest series that they're doing that's in this timeline, which is Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin, which I have personal feelings about it that I think it's great. We'll get into it another time frame. But does that play possibly the fact that the sky is in us? Does that play into y'all's expectations, John or Branson?
Well, I mean, the fact that he is so heavily involved, where we thought that perhaps the reason the episode did so poorly is because it was a guy who wasn't deeply involved. Certainly gives me hope.
I dig that. John?
No.
Okay.
John's like, no.
What are your expectations, my man?
I'll be honest. I am the perfect control subject for this movie.
I'm actually excited about that.
Because I know next to nothing, not nothing, but next to nothing about the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this will be a good control test because I have major feels that this movie is designed specifically for people who already are familiar with the series.
Mm.
And so the majority of the people who will see this movie are going to fit that demographic. So it'll be an interesting watching for me to go into this not being a part of that demographic and being able to speak to, can you go into this as a blank slate?
Right.
Will it work for you?
Honestly, I'm really excited that you are part of this journey, and also like, so when you first came on board with the Gundam Watch stuff, you joined us when we're talking about the Witch from Mercury, and you came in with some trepidation because you knew nothing about anything Gundam, and you were concerned that you would have to know things in order to get Soletta Mercury's Witch from Mercury.
Right.
But this is a one where legitimately you do have to know some stuff, and that was kind of out of on the YouTube channel. I put out a short and I asked the question because I brought up your situation about not knowing, and I asked the question: is Gundam in trouble because we have so much in this world, or is the property still manageable? And I got a lot of mixed reactions from people on YouTube about it. People going, look, most of the stuff is isolated, this and that, but this right here, this is literally a slice of out of a whole series. Like, you're 15 episodes deep before you get to this. So I'm really intrigued to see how you respond to this.
And not only that, but also I know enough about how Gundam works to know by 15 episodes, I mean, like, if you're 15 episodes in on Witch from Mercury,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to understand the reasons why I enjoy The Witch from Mercury.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It makes a switch. Yeah, totally. All right, cool. Well, those are expectations for you guys. I'm hyped about it. I've seen trailers about it, and you guys have said, or like what Branson said, they're taking something that was terrible and they're reworking it. I have hopes. I have high hopes. Before this came out, there were several things. You had Gundam Origin, which I enjoy Gundam Origin. Char's Counterattack, I loved. I thought that was a great movie. I need to get back to it, but I was doing reviews on Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam, and I enjoyed it, as depressing as it was. So I think I'm going to enjoy this journey. So those are expectations. If you're listening to us on YouTube, pause the video and leave your expectations in the chat, and then you go watch this movie yourself, or leave in the comment section and come back. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's go watch the film on these magical leaves that Branson's put together for us.
That is how you tell that story. That yes.
That wasn't even the same story.
Exactly. The way you tell that story is you don't tell that story. You tell an actually good story.
Well, oh my goodness. I'm trying to figure out where to begin with this. Branson, what about this, outside of the fact that it wasn't the original one, why did you like this story? I have thoughts, but what are your thoughts?
Okay. You said before we were talking about whether or not you needed to have seen the original Mobile Suit Gundam series to be able to appreciate this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think to be able to fully appreciate it, you kind of have to, because one, there were so many more characters in this movie.
Yes.
from the original series than in the short episode. Characters that I really enjoyed, like the fact that Bright was in here piqued my interest. I was like, oh, I get to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Frau showed up, oh, and Frau's in here. And then we see Sayla. Oh, Sayla's here. And I even got excited when Haro showed up. I mean, I was like, I wrote in my notes, I was like, I miss Haro. So
Nobody misses a Haru.
Aww. But it took me back to what I appreciated about the original Mobile Suit
Mhm.
Gundam. It felt almost like I actively avoid my high school reunions, so I can't say it's like that, but a reunion that you actually enjoy.
Yeah.
Like you bump into old friends and you're like, oh my gosh, I've missed talking to you. How have you been?
Mm-hmm.
It felt like that. And then the moments where they paid homage to previous moments in it, like when Amuro's in his dream state and he remembers talking to both his mother and his father and the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Seeing that moment, having Bright remember when he slapped Amuro in the face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just it felt like Gundam. It had that same feeling, and it was, I don't know, like I said, it was like bumping into old friends at the grocery store and talking with them and losing track of time. That it just felt right, and I appreciated it.
If I can do a callback to an episode that most of our listeners haven't listened to here, John and Branson did a special podcast episode for the patrons of Geek Devotions called John and Bam Talk Church. And Branson shared kind of his life story a little bit and some of the struggles. And he talked about how he and I had reconnected after many years and how there was just kind of like this reunion, like we picked up right where we were at. Is that kind of what you're describing right now?
Yes, that is exactly it. Yes. It's like I rounded that corner in the office and saw you standing there, and I was like, "Bro, it's you!"
Right.
That is how it felt, and it honestly it made me want to go back and watch Mobile Suit Gundam all over again.
Right.
Like again, giving a peek behind the curtain. While we were recording the previous episode, I was looking up where I could watch the original Mobile Suit Gundam because it reminded me of everything that I loved about that series.
Mm-hmm.
And it but unlike the lost episode that made me want to stop watching this episode and go watch the others, I was still intrigued by it because it was familiar. I wanted to see how this story played out because I was operating with characters that I understood, that I knew, that I was familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they captured Amuro a lot better in this episode. Even the I don't know. I don't want to monopolize the time. I just it felt right, and I appreciated this so much more. So kudos to the creators for taking the time to redo this episode. I think they did extremely well.
Right. We'll get into some specifics here in a second with you, Branson and John also, but just to have that dichotomy, that opposite feel, John, as somebody coming in new, somebody coming in fresh, who's never seen, or you've seen like the first two episodes. What was it like for you? Like, did you enjoy the way they told the story? Now we're on the back end. You watched some of the original. So how do you feel about this one?
Okay, well, you're setting me up for failure with how you introduced me on this, because you're giving the presupposition that I watched the other one first, which
that's true. You watched this first originally, so
that said, I went into this with zero expectation and zero knowledge as far as what happens in any context.
Mm-hmm.
So having gone into this blank, like completely blank, I knew, just knowing how Gundam operates, there was an expectation of a certain amount of knowledge going into it. And there were characters for the Xeon whatever that I felt like I was expected to know who they were or care
No.
that they were on the screen.
Pause for 1 second. Are you speaking about the Brown Southern Cross?
Them.
Okay.
Also, the dictator guy who was making threats to the other
General.
Earth Defense Force admiral or whatever.
Right.
And I felt like I was supposed to know who he was or care. And
I want to give you this. To be fair, I have no idea who that general was either. I didn't recognize him. I had to pick up context clue. You did kind of have to know the dictator guy. He popped up briefly in one episode beforehand. The Brown Southern Cross was brand new. They only exist in this and the novel version. So that was a new experience for me too. So I'm with you on that one. I was like, who are these people? But I legitimately going, did I miss these people in the previous things?
But I went in with the expectation that I was going to have to cut around some of the connective tissue to get to the meat of what I was supposed to be paying attention to.
Right.
So going in with that expectation, I was like, okay, yeah, this is extra stuff that I can semi understand well enough through context clues, but it's not going to be necessary to the core of the story they're being told here. Because in order to actually do a movie with any amount of competence, which is asking a lot, because the only other Gundam movie I've seen was that live action.
Oh yeah,
it was.
Yeah, G Savior.
Yeah, that was again
Oof.
Asking a lot based off of that. But
I have heard legends of this G Savior.
Oof.
Anyway. Woof. Anyway, so working around that, I kind of figured that the whole core story was going to revolve around this island and not much off of it. So keeping that context, it was fine. I think anybody that hasn't watched OG Gundam could probably watch the movie, and if you walk in understanding that there's going to be some connective plot that you're going to have to work through, you can watch it and still have a good time with the core story they're telling.
Right. Yeah. That's honestly one of the things that as I was watching it, I was trying to think about your experience, what it would be. And I was trying to ask myself, like, what are they telling the story in a way that noobs could go in? All right, I'm tracking with you. There's context clues for me to understand. And I feel like they did a decent job. And I don't know if it was because they were trying to tell a better story or if they're going with the mindset of people haven't watched the first 14 episodes to catch all the stuff. And so I feel like they did it in a way where it wasn't just pandering for the people who grew up with Gundam, who watched the original stuff, but it was a way that was legitimately instructional, but also keeping you entertained. Like, one of the complaints about Batman movies is every Batman movie has the Waynes being killed.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh God, we already know this. But some people don't. Like, I know
Spider-Man and Uncle Ben getting shot.
Yeah. And so being able to tell that story in a way that old heads don't just check out, but the new people, are still like, oh, okay, we're cool. I feel like they did a decent job. Like, when they were exploring kind of the trauma that Amuro was going through, do you feel like that was holding your attention? You were able to keep up with that, John?
When you say trauma that Amuro was going through.
So, like, for me, the way you could tell, I felt like you saw Amuro's hesitation to kill on the front end of it. You saw Amuro's, and then right after you see his hesitation to kill, you see him dealing with the memories of his mom yelling at him because she thinks he's a murderer, and then his dad's stressing of, basically, this is it, war's everything, do it, and then you see flashbacks of him dealing with Lieutenant Bright. Slapping around, which we didn't really get context. That's one thing I feel like they failed on, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But I take that back. They hinted at things with Bright, but they didn't do a great job. So there was all these kind of like emotional trauma things being thrusted upon Amuro at one time. And I feel like they did a decent job of kind of hinting at those things for you to understand that this is not a well put together kid.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't give me a whole lot of context. Like, I understood the whole mom and dad bit, and it gave me a very deep sense of context to understand like the specificities that I should be paying attention to with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it gave me enough to know, okay, he's carrying some baggage from some situations.
Mm-hmm.
But not enough to understand the weight of that baggage. So
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I liked about this movie is it went back and revisited that whole concept of innocence of youth versus horrors of war. Because that's a major plot point for Amuro is how he deals with, I'm a kid, but I'm a soldier, and how do you balance those two? I thought this movie as a whole got
You're muted.
that was weird. I didn't do that.
All right. Rewind. You said the movie as a whole.
Yeah, the movie as a whole goes back to that whole concept of innocence of youth versus horrors of war, which is something that Amuro deals with a lot in the original MSG. And you see that spelled out because he has his nightmares and he has this compulsion to find his Gundam because he's a soldier. He's got to find the Gundam. You know, this Zaku pilot, even though he saved my life, he's the enemy. I don't know if I can trust him. But then he's surrounded by children who have chores and get excited about birthday parties and cry because it's too dark at night and just all of this youthful innocence and that tension between I'm a good soldier who does what he's told and I just want to enjoy the life that I have. This movie brought that out in a way that the episode completely ignored. Like the episode didn't dwell on that at all.
Right.
And the movie made it a point. Like, no, we're going to sit here. We're going to make him sit here and have these kids hate him because he's a soldier, but then watch him come around. Make him realize that these are human beings and that he needs to help them. And then watch them. It was interesting to watch the children change and become more comfortable around him and to actually cheer him on, and be grateful for him, especially the oldest boy. I can't remember his name now. But the one who had to let him borrow a pair of trousers and wanted to go fight. And at first he was like, this is the guy I'm supposed to beat up. And then it's like, no, you're actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, you brought us into an interesting conversation now about kind of the differences between the two. What were some of the differences between the two that you guys liked about the between the show and the movie?
Animation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about that for a second, because you brought up you brought a really great relationship, or not relationship. You brought a great. You compared it to something really great that somebody else on Facebook.
Apparently, I don't bring out a very good relationship, guys. I'm sorry. I'm only here because I bought my way on the show with the PlayStation at one point, and then they haven't been able to shake me since, I guess.
So, but for real, it's like, because you brought up this point, you related to another animation style that somebody on our Facebook, Drew from the Cellcast, had the exact same thoughts. What were you relating this to?
Ghibli.
Yeah.
This had a very Ghibli vibe to it.
Thank you. That was bothering me the whole time I was watching this. I was like, this looks like something. What does this look like? It looks like Ghibli. Yes.
Dude, if you'd pay attention to our Discord chat, we had a big old chat about it. Me and Dallas.
He was busy today handling things.
My kid had a birthday party.
My dude, I'm just saying. At any rate, and I threw that out there specifically for you, Bram Stoker. There we go. I threw this out there specifically for you though, because you can appreciate differences in art styles, because being an artist yourself, and especially one who has just recently found out he has a talent with anime art styles. Um, I, but yeah, because being the first one I put on, I'm like, this feels very Ghibli to me. Like at moments, it feels like it would be a part of Princess Mononoke. At other times when the
Yes.
kids would show up on the screen, I'm going, hey, it's Ponyo. Some of these kids are probably married then.
Yeah.
Don't yes that statement.
It's a fact, bro. There's child marriage at the end of Ponyo. But I digress. It felt very Ghibli to me. And then on our Facebook, I noticed that Drew had posted on there, it looks like Ghibli. And I'm like, thank you. Because having an expert vindicate your opinion says a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
But it did very much feel like they were trying to emulate that late 70s, early 80s anime feel, but with modern sensibilities, which is, I think, at the core of pretty much all Studio Ghibli anything, is that they're trying to evoke that early 80s anime style, but do it with modern sensibilities in every time Ghibli operates. So I think that's why it was giving me the Ghiblis.
Do you?
I got to admit, I'm
gonna call it that from now on. Whenever you get that, whenever you get the nostalgic feels from any kind of anime, it gives you a case of the Ghiblis.
I actually got pulled out of it a little bit with when they showed the mobile suits, because there was a clear distinction between hand-drawn animation and stuff that was a little bit more rigging computer. I mean, they cell shaded it in such a way that it still looked hand-drawn, but there was just a difference in the movement, and I get that's a stylistic choice, but it actually took me out a little bit to see, the people hand drawn, and then you see the mobile suits and they look very rigged, like someone was playing around in Blender. And I think part of the reason is I've actually recently been on a quest of watching a lot of Studio Ghibli movies, and I recently watched Castle in the Sky. And Castle in the Sky has a lot of otherworldly, it even has like a big robot and that kind of thing, but it is 100% hand drawn. There's nothing that pulls you out because everything is there's no computer animated looking things. And I actually really enjoyed the look of all that. So for this, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad choice or a wrong choice, but when they talk about the immersion of a movie, every time I saw scenes with the Gundams, it reminded me, oh yeah, I'm watching a movie. I'm not actually in the experience with these people. It pulled me out a little bit.
I can see that.
I could appreciate that, but in the same sense, though, I think it just kind of comes down to how much money's put into it, because as much as everybody adores Ghibli, and they should, there's moments where Ghibli uses some computer aided techniques that pull me out of it. Like one that I adore, and thank you to your wife, Dallas, for pointing me this direction, but suddenly can't remember it now. Howl's Moving Castle.
Oh yeah.
There's moments where the animation begins to shudder because they've switched over to computer aided animation, and it starts to feel a little bit more Final Fantasy and a little bit less feature animation.
I can see that.
So I can dig it, but I think it just comes down to the amount of money that they want to put into it to make it look that way. And when it comes down to it, the amount of people who would be interested in a movie based off a single missing episode of a niche animation television show from the 70s, I don't think has the financial solvency to be able to fund something that's a little bit more fluidly animated with the computer animated portions.
Well, when you describe it that way.
See, here's the deal though. Like I felt that the animation was real fluid. Like in fact, with the mech battles, like I thought they were super fluid.
There were moments where they were, especially during the fight scenes, like the moment where Doan slices through the girl Brown Cross pilot, and she's looking up and saying, "Why did you do it?" And they're just kind of frozen in time there. That looked really good. But then I'd have to go back and watch it again to really point it out. There were just some moments where it was like, okay, this looks very mechanized, very computerized, less hand drawn.
Okay, so are you talking about it was choppy, or are you saying that it was that you could tell when they went to a computer to do it?
I could tell when they went to a computer to use it.
Okay, not that it was choppy animation.
No.
Okay. That's what I thought you were saying. I was like, it was super smooth the entire time.
No. Yeah, it was very smooth.
No, I was sorry. That's on me. I was the one who brought the choppiness into it.
I was so confused. I'm like,
when I was explaining,
something's wrong with your TV, man. Just buffering.
It was what I was talking about. Howls is when I was talking about choppy, just and being able to spot when you're flipping over from animation source.
I gotcha. Yes. I'm totally agreeing with you. You could definitely tell. At the same time, I appreciated that the mech battles looked that way because it looked good, in my opinion. Like this, the fight scenes look better. The way that they animated, like that first fight with Doan and Amuro, when he dodges out of the way of the axe, and then it actually takes out the dadgum shield, you know. But also, like doing what they did, though, in my opinion, allowed them to do more details to the Gundam than what they would do with traditional animation. Because the traditional animation, like you didn't see there were times where it looked like a suit and not a war machine, if you will, in the original animation. Whereas this one, it's like, I'm looking at pictures right now. He's got his military markings. He has the RX-78-02, which I appreciate that details there, that because this is actually the second model of Gundam. This isn't the first one. It has the white base markings on it. Going over another shot, you have the markings for the Southern Cross, or for the not Southern Cross. I'm sorry, that's Macross. But for the Brown Cross, you have the markings on the gym. Like those small details, especially as someone who builds Gunpla, I appreciate seeing those things. And like I wish I could go to Japan before they take down the Gundam. But that's what the Gundam looks like. Like those markings and everything, the real life Gundam that they have there in Japan right now. To me, I'm like, man, that is so cool to see it so lifelike right there. And the fight scenes I thought were pretty lit the entire time through.
Yeah. I mean, they were entertaining to watch for sure. And like I said, there were moments where even with the computer animation, they shaded it in such a way that it still looked hand drawn. And again, I wish I could think of specific times. It just the way it moved, you could tell it was just different. And I'm not saying I hated it or I disliked it or that it was that big of a complaint. It was just like I said, it reminded me. It felt a little jarring sometimes. Like, oh wait, this looks different. It's kind of like the very first Superman serials, where whenever he flies, he turns into a cartoon and flies off. You never actually see the live action Superman flying. And it's not that big a deal, and you kind of go with it because it's part of the narrative.
Right.
But you notice it. And that's kind of how it was with me. It wasn't that big a deal, and it was. I rolled with it. I still absolutely love the movie. It's just something I noticed. And for a second, it took me out.
I get that. Well, were there any other differences that you guys appreciated about this?
Let me consult my notes.
While you consult your notes, I want to bring up something I had, and that was the things that they added to the story. I felt like it brought more gravitas to everything. The fact that Doan is now, instead of just a desertee, he was the leader of an entire squadron of elite soldiers, and he was now, and it felt like they dealt more with his conviction, his grief, not even it's all the self-condemnation,
right,
and the need to protect the children. And then you have even more like just across the board, the fact that Bright is dealing with his own grief for the way he treated Amuro. The when he tells Slagger to go find Amuro because he's just a kid. Few episodes before, and of course you have to have watched the show. He was treating Amuro really trashy and going telling him to man up, because that was during the time frame with Lieutenant Matilda. If you remember that, Branson.
Yes, I do.
And where he was just acting like a brat the entire time.
Yeah.
And then what I love, the thing that brought really the gravity of things for the ending, at least, for things to make sense. So it's not just a random Zaku who just shows up. There's a reason he's on the island.
Right. And a reason that Zeon forces keep going to the island, and he keeps fighting them.
Right.
There's a point. It's not just I'm here on this island and people come fight me. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it fleshed that out so much. I almost wonder if they sat down and they went through and found every hole in the episode and said, okay, let's fill it with something. But, what's a believable reason why people keep getting sent to this island? Well, let's put a weapon of mass destruction on there. Okay. Well, why does he feel so guilty? Well, let's not just make him a Zaku pilot. Let's make him one of the elite Zaku pilots who are known for killing, to make his betrayal that much deeper. I appreciated that Amuro spent so much time with the children, and that we saw them hate him because he's a soldier, and then see him help fix the water supply, see him fix the lighthouse, do these things that kind of wins over the hearts of the children. And then we spend more time with the children, so we actually care about what they think. They took the time to really invest in all this stuff to make us care that honestly you can't do in a 20-minute episode. And maybe that was part of the problem with the episodes. They tried to put too much that required too much backstory and explanation that they just didn't take the time to explain. Yeah.
Possibly. What are your thoughts, John?
I'm sorry, I got lost in Bam's answer and I forgot what the question was.
We're talking about just the gravitas that was brought to it because of the things that they added to it.
Oh, right. I mean, this one being the first one that I watched in series instead of the TV show. I mean, it felt fine. Like, for me, it really felt like an episode that was padded out to a movie length. Like, a lot of
in
the
a
time,
good way or a bad way?
in a not a good way. Like, in a
Really?
I'm watching Best of the Best again sort of way, where it's just action training montage that doesn't necessarily
But John,
add
you liked
anything.
Best of the Best.
I do like Best
You
of the
liked
Best.
Best of the Best.
I do like Best
Did
of
you
the
call it
Best.
Bad of the best.
But let's call it like it is. That movie was padded out with training montages, my dude. Like this,
It did feel like it was very like they
This-
added slice of life elements to this.
that didn't need to be there. Like, this honestly would have been better as a 45-minute extra, like a double episode, rather than as a movie, I think. Because there was a few times where I'm just like, God, this is, or even if they just tried to make it like a 90-minute movie instead of like this was like a long movie. Like it was if I remember, it was an hour and 43 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look it up while you talk.
I knew that's what you were doing. That's why I stopped talking. But yeah, it needed to be pared down. There was some stuff that was added to it that I'm like, yes, they streamlined the story a little bit and added the missing parts.
It is an hour and 49 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a long movie, and it feels like a long movie. But I mean, like there you could see that they put the effort in to make it a better story, but it also felt like they needed to pad it out to justify its existence, is how it felt to me. So, and if I were to compare the two, I think the thing that disappoints me the most is that they never actually outright said that Doan had killed these kids' parents in the movie like they did in the show.
Yes, you're right. They never actually said that. Although it was the way he did it in the show, it was really awkward the way that he did that. But they did have in this one, like his flashbacks, his PTSD flashbacks to those type of things.
Yeah,
and I guess it was because in those flashbacks, I noticed that the kids didn't quite look like the kids from this.
well, there were
Like, it
so many
almost looked
more
like-
kids too. Like in the episode, he had 4, maybe 5 kids,
Mhm.
and in the movie, he had like a whole orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
And then too, in the episode when he's having his flashback, he's like grinning. It's like he's almost looks like he's giddy that he's doing it, so it doesn't make sense why he's traumatized by it. But in the movie, I think in the flashback, he's looking through the viewfinder of the Zako suit, and he sees one of the kids crying over a body kind of splayed out on the ground, and you see blood trickling away from the where the body's lying, and
Mm-hmm.
he has this look of horror on his face.
Yeah.
So it drove home that he did this and that it horrified him. And whereas you kind of had to put the pieces together and figure it out in the episode.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of the problem because there were times I'm with John. There were times where like this was kind of slow at points, and I'm wondering if it's because the slowest points where we had to put dots together. I wonder if that was the problem with it, and that's why it felt slow at times for John, and even for me at times is because I'm going, okay, well this is here, and I'm all for show don't tell, but sometimes I'm like, can we just say things?
I definitely thought this movie was more emotional,
Oh gosh, yes.
which plays into the whole Studio Ghibli thing because every Studio Ghibli movie I've watched, excuse me, it has felt like he's trying to tell a very emotional story,
Mm-hmm.
and this one felt like it almost felt like it was trying to convey an emotion more so than transmit information.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying this happened and this happened and then this happened and then this happened, it's this is how he felt.
Mm.
And then he saw this situation and this is how he felt.
Right.
And then he was forced to think about this and this is how he felt. And I don't know. Maybe because I watched the episode first and the movie was such a breath of fresh air, I was just like, all right, finally, I'm just taking it all in. There were some scenes that I think could have been shortened.
Yeah.
I thought that the lighthouse, like I called pretty early on that the lighthouse wasn't really broken, that Doan was deliberately not fixing it to not draw attention to the island.
Right.
And when Amuro fixed it, he got upset and was like, well, great. And then they just never did anything with it.
Mm.
Like, there was no one that said, hey, I'm seeing a lighthouse that hasn't been active in years and it's suddenly active. Let's go investigate or anything like that. Like, it just, darn, right. He was like, darn, the lighthouse is on. And
I
then
think
they
the
just-
purpose of the lighthouse was
Like
to make
Zoink
Gundam look
Scoob?
cool when he was standing over the crater.
yes,
When he first
there
shows
was
up, that
moment.
was the purpose of the White House. The lighthouse is for Gundam to be like, wow.
So they need a reason to turn it on earlier in the movies. By golly,
Basically.
we're not going to have holes. We're not going to have the lighthouse randomly turn on. We have to have a reason it's on.
Yes. Totally. So yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. I kind of along the lines of that Ghibli relation that John's pointed out. They weirdly put out details I appreciated throughout it, like small little, like Ghibli movies, like they'll randomly illustrate or animate things that don't need to be animated. Like when they turned on the faucet in this after they fixed the busted pipe.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
When it rattles and it spurts. I had that same thought while I was watching it. I'm like, this is what Ghibli does too. That makes me love it. Is they animate the imperfections of the scene to make it feel more lifelike.
Yeah.
Like when there's a part when Amuro's running down a hill and he hits like some rough dirt or something, and they animated him having a slight stumble and then having to slow down when he hit the tall weeds and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, who thinks to animate that?
Right.
Exactly. Like it was the small details, like and all those things. Like I could tell this was a labor of love. Like to me, this was we love Gundam and we want to make this good. And so they thought to go, let's animate the faucet shaking because it hasn't had water go through it in a little while.
Yeah.
You know, let's have Amuro stumble and slow down because he hit the weeds. Like those small details, like to me, the people who worked on it, they genuinely love the property. It wasn't just a paycheck. It was, this is our work of art that we're doing our best for.
For sure.
I want to point out one last thing, and then we'll get into our thing. The goat scene where they're capturing the goat. We mentioned how in the previous one that
I have seen more goat nipple in this than I ever wanted to see in my life.
Right? But the
now
goat
you
scene
know how to effectively milk a goat.
right?
You will know how to milk a goat by the end of this. You will know what the hole looks like that the milk comes out of, because they do a very close up on it. And
See, when y'all were talking about imperfections and little pieces of life to make it seem realistic, I thought that's one of the things y'all were talking about.
no, sir.
I'm not even referring to that whole aspect right now. I'm referring to the end of the movie where they're capturing the goat and then they're doing all the weird animation stuff.
I'm sorry, dude. It's just I had blocked the goat out until you had said that, and then I had goat nipple flashbacks.
Lord. But anyways, in our last episode, we felt like how the whole episode 15 didn't feel like Gundam. This whole movie felt like Gundam. And for some reason, when they did the goat scene, it really felt like old school Gundam, where they had the weird, like they had those weird freeze frames. They had audio take place. That's what they did all the time.
Right.
And so, like,
they did it with the goat.
with the goat. I'm like, okay, sure. Seeing Kai at home, dude, just trying to capture that goat. I was like, all right, this is legitimately Gundam right now. Is the goat. And so, all right. Cool beans. What any final thoughts before we give our final thoughts?
What? So my final thought about this film is that it made me want an entire series reboot for OG MSG
Okay.
done in this style. Like, I want to see the entire series redrawn in this style with the basically emulating the whole old but new effect that they got with this. I would be interested in that. Like, that would suck me in.
I love this idea. But this is also why I really think you may enjoy Gundam Origins when we get to that. Because Gundam Origins takes place before this series begins. And so you have elements that lead into it. And because they're just now introduced as an old Gundam fan, I'm excited about it, but introduces you in a really good way. And it's all in this animation. So I guess that answers both my questions. Like, did you actually enjoy this, John?
I did. I think my like I said, my biggest gripe about it is it had more length than it had content.
Okay.
So I would have enjoyed it more if it was trimmed up a bit. However, I enjoyed it enough to the point where it made me wish that the original series would get this treatment, the entire original series.
Mm-hmm.
I would be interested in seeing that version of it with better voice acting and better animation, because those are the two things that take me out of the OG series. Is just the animation's a little bit it's a little bit chunky. It's not chunky enough to get me in on the Plan 9 side.
Mm-hmm.
And the voice acting is, well, I mean, let's face it, animation voice acting from the 1970s and 80s isn't what it is now.
Did you watch it in Japanese or English?
I watched it in English.
The original series?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd be interested to see how you feel about it in Japanese. Because you're right. Dubbing was rough going into English, but it's a little smoother when it's in Japanese. So I'll be curious to hear how you feel about it watching in Japanese. So, all right, Branson.
I would agree with John in that I'd be interested to see, maybe instead of the series, do like the 3 movies that we watched originally, have those movies be redone in this animation style. At the same time, part of me is afraid that it would actually take away from, because I actively enjoyed the original MSG. Part of me is afraid that redoing it would actually take away from the experience. Which makes me very
if
curious
you're getting
about
this as a proof of concept, though.
Yeah, well, that's what makes me curious about Origins, because you said Origins kind of is the same idea. It's the same universe, but it's a different story. Same characters, but different story.
It's the beginning of the story.
Yeah, the beginning of the story, but it's not a rehash of the movie.
Right.
It's a completely different story in that it's a different plot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very interested to see that, because that I think would work. I think the reason I was nostalgic for the original MSG, even though it was a completely different art style, is because it was a different story. It wasn't. I actually had seen an episode, but it was so terrible that it didn't matter. But like if they redid episode 1, where the Zaku suits attack, was it side 7 they got blown up? They attack side 7 and Amuro jumps in the Gundam suit for the first time. If they redid that in this new animation, it would aesthetically look better. But part of me wonders if it wouldn't also take away. And I honestly don't know the answer to that question until I would sit down and see it done.
Right.
But I did have that thought of man, this animation looks so good. It'd be cool if they just did everything like that. So I don't know. Ultimately, I like I said, I enjoyed it. It made me want to go back and watch the original again, because it harkened back to so many characters that I enjoyed seeing. And I'm gonna say something I may get side eye for, but I don't care. As much as I have enjoyed Gundam Wing and the new take that Gundam Wing is, the fact that I had such a strong emotional reaction to the nostalgia for MSG. And the thing is, MSG is not something I grew up with. It's something that I watched for the sake of this podcast. So it's not even like I'm an old fan of it. But given the emotional reaction I had for the nostalgia for MSG, I'm gonna say that I think I actually am at a place where I like MSG better than Gundam Wing. I enjoy that universe. I enjoy those characters. That world makes more sense to me. No,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong. I still enjoy Gundam Wing, I stand by what I said. If I were a kid and Gundam Wing was the first thing I was ever exposed to in Mobile Suit Gundam, it made sense that was the series that made it popular in the United States. That makes sense.
Right.
But as far as the overarching story and everything, I've not gotten a hankering to go back and rewatch episodes of Gundam Wing. I've watched it. I've enjoyed watching it. I thought it was really cool to watch, but I mean, I'm borrowing the DVDs from Dallas. If I wanted to, I could sit down and watch them again. Never got a hankering to,
Mhm.
but I really feel like going back and watching MSG again now. So I think I think what this movie did was it pointed out that I actually appreciate was it the 0079 universe? Is that what it's called?
Um, my brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
0079.
Yeah. I think I'm actually more of a fan of that
Universal Century. That's what it's called.
Universal Century. Okay. I think I'm actually more of a fan of Universal Century than Gundam Wing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would not have expected to say that, but here we are.
That's fair. I mean, and the thing is, there's a lot of people who would really agree with you, Branson, on that.
Yeah.
John?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I don't think that's as hot of a take as you think it is, Bam.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because to my understanding, whichever God, I can't talk. Words. Okay, whichever Gundam series you're into is kind of like it's kind of it's almost like its own personality test, sort of like.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
No, I mean it's sort of like with there. I know the two of you won't be familiar with it, but if anybody out there's like into heavy metal stuff,
Mhm.
it's sort of like whichever Death album is your favorite album. It kind of speaks to your personality a little bit because each one is so individual and different from every other one. So I mean it's like for Bam, his is Universal Century, or OG Gundam or whatever we call this series, and that's kind of his jam. Whereas with Gundam, Wing is his thing, and as it turns out, for me it's Witch for Mercury, because I'm into high school drama magic girls. So whatever that says about me, that's that I it's fine. It's part of who I am, and I can accept that about myself. I've come a long way.
I respect that. So I'm gonna say, Branson, everything you said is completely valid, and I'm glad that you had this emotional response to it, and it has spurred you to kind of go back and watch some stuff. And again, it's like what John said. Everyone has their own experience. Everyone has their own thing they enjoy. This is one of the things that I really strive to do within Geek Devotions as a whole is try to bypass the stupidity of the gatekeeping of going, no, this is better. This is better. How dare you have this opinion about this thing? We like what we like. I believe. What is your phrase, John? You don't yuck on somebody's yum.
I far be it for me to yuck somebody else's yum.
Yeah, and so it's legitimately it's a thing, and I enjoy a lot of Universal Century. Like I so cards on the table. I had to pull out my old hard drive because we were having problems finding the original episode 15. And I forgot how much of the original Gundam Universal Century is on my hard drive. So, and because it is a great world, but it's also the most fleshed out world. So totally get that. Drew from the Cellcast, he is dying for us to start doing G Gundam, and he wants to have the opportunity to be part of that conversation because he loves G Gundam. So everyone's got their own thing. So for me, talking about my thoughts on this particular movie, rather, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the suit designs. I thought they were much better drawn than they were in the original version of this story. I just across the board, better animation, obviously.
Mhm.
I like the introduction of the high mobility Zaku that they put in there.
Mhm.
And even the flashback of Char's Zaku 2, I thought it looked really clean. I thought that was a really cool, really clean looking Char's Zaku 2.
Yeah.
But those high mobility Zakus, holy crap. Like that was really great to see that play out. And then just the
Mhm.
emotional depth of the story as a whole was so much better than that original show. And it was something that I enjoyed. Like, if I didn't know anything about episode 15, if they came and said, hey, we have a story that's based in that timeline, it was an untold story, I've been like, let's rock it out. I've been happy with it.
Mhm.
And I think it's, and John, I think is a testament to it. Like it gives enough information for you to follow along so that if you are new to it, it's solid. So I liked it. And if this was the first thing I saw of Gundam, like John, I'd be like, can I see more of this? Which I think would then point me to probably the Gundam Origins. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, guys. Listeners, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Did you like this movie? Let us know. Comments on the YouTube side. Reach out to us. You can message us on TikTok. Not TikTok. I apologize. On Instagram. Look for the Gundam Watch. Also, our Facebook page is reviving again. So message us there. And that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the time has come.
Cruise maintenance reports now loading in 3, 2, 1.
All right, it's time for our maintenance report, and I just realized how much I wish that our maintenance report was a little more interesting, like the what we have for the bottom shelf. So, oh my goodness. Anyways, this is where we take a look at what we just watched, and we bring out some redemptive quality to it to point you back to hope, to grace, to let you know that you're loved and you're cared for. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm taking the reign on it. And I'm looking at a scene towards the end that was not in the original one. And that was right at the end after they've taken care of the enemy Zakus and everything's going good. It's right before Amuro yeets the Zaku into the ocean. The kids run up to Doan and they say that with Amuro and Doan, they're no longer scared of war. They no longer have to have fear because they have these figures that they go, we can trust them. Now, on the flip side, Doan said something that I felt like was good, which is, you should be. And I'll say yes to a degree. We'll get into that here in a second. But the whole thing is these kids have confidence. They know they're going to be okay because Doan and Amuro are bringing protection. There's this aspect, they have faith in them. And there's this passage about faith, and it is the substance of things hoped for. And that's the thing is, a lot of people that look at faith and they just automatically think it's just blind faith. It's just like, it's whatever. But there's substance there. And that substance is a track record. It's seeing it take place. We have faith in God, us here, the three of us here, because we've seen God move in our lives through different ways. We've seen God move in powerful, in dramatic ways that we just can't question it anymore. And we have scriptures now that help us to understand things. Going back again to the Patreon episode for Geek Devotions that John and Branson did, John shared a bit of his testimony, and this episode will actually be coming out. I don't know when this episode is going to drop out. Anyways, but there were things in John's life that he experienced, and he knew God was real. There was a person who God used powerfully. They had some terrible coffee breath, and it was nauseating. But in that moment, God was real. Huh?
My dude, that breath. Like my dude.
John still has PTSD. It's probably the reason why he's a Gundam pilot now. Anyways, so but there's substance there. And these kids have seen this track record. They go, we know that we're going to be okay because you're here with us. You're going to take care of us. And that's the thing is that as people who are Christ followers, we love Jesus, we love God, and we follow him faithfully as faithful as we can. There's a peace that comes because It's not a blind faith. There's substance to it. I think back to Psalm 23, verse 4. It says this: even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, that they comfort me. Those words, written long before any rap song, they are so heavy because of the understanding of who the psalmist is talking about. The psalmist is saying that they can gladly and confidently walk through terrible situations. They're still understanding that it's not good. He understands it's the valley of the shadow of death. And so when Doan says you should be scared of war, yeah, you should be aware. Don't stop. I get tired of these Christians guys who go, oh, it's all good. And they're just all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like a squirrel on crack. Look, not everyone's meant to be just that. Okay, look, life is real. Life sucks sometimes. We live in a fallen state. Adam and Eve bit the fruit bit them in the butt, and now we are living in the consequences of it. And it sucks. But we can still walk with confidence knowing that we serve a God who is bigger than all that, because we know that he's with us, because we know that his rod and his staff, they lead us, they comfort us, they help us. I heard a really great illustration a couple days ago from a former pastor of mine. Dude has literally forgotten more than I will ever know. But he was talking about the fallen state of man. And he said that, let's say Adam and Eve, they fell in a big hole. And they didn't get out of that hole, but they're in that hole. And all their kids are born in that hole. And a lot of people, they go, well, why do we have to suffer for Adam and Eve's mistake? Well, it's just a nature of the fact that Adam and Eve were born in a hole called sin, and we're all born into it. Mm-hmm. The grace part is that God's going, here's my hand. Let me pull you out of that. It's scary. Because especially if all you ever known was that hole. It's unsure because all you know is the four walls of that hole that you've been in all your life. But if you trust him, we have this confidence to go, we can make it. He's going to help us through this one step at a time. So my encouragement for you guys is, as cliche as it is, trust in God. Trust in him with everything, because life sucks. And we should be aware of the dangers and the stuff, but they should not control us. They should not be the things that bind us. I think about the disciples when they're on the boat and there's a storm coming and they're freaking out, and they look to Jesus and Jesus is asleep, and they're like, what are you doing? We're going to die. And Jesus wakes up, he rebukes the storm. He says, oh, you of little faith. He's not angry at them because they woke him up. He's getting on to them because they know who Jesus is, and they still think that he's going to die in the boat. They're not trusting in him. He's like, hey, have faith that I'm going to take care of it, that we're going to make it. So that's my maintenance report for you guys today.
Amen.
Cool beans. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
I have an idea.
Please
before
speak.
we close out. Sorry, I just cut you off on your close, but we said that's my maintenance report for the day. If anybody out there has their own maintenance report they can give us off of any of the episodes that we do here, or over at the bottom shelf as well, like if you have a weak connection that you can make over at the bottom shelf, share that with us. I would love to be able to share your weak connection or maintenance report, because it's not just about us here. We want to know that what we're doing here is landing with you, and if you can do what we can do, that's good information to know. So.
Yeah, absolutely, love it. All right. Well, last time I asked if anybody had anything to report or anything to promote, everyone said, no, just go check out the Geek Devotions Discord. So I'm going to just real quick poll. Is that what we're all saying?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to invite you to be part of the Geek Devotions Discord. Again, the Gundam Watch is part of the Geek Devotions podcast network. And Geek Devotions is a show from devoted geeks who are devoted to people they're loved. It's hard to do. We don't know you're there. So come pop into the Discord. The link's in the show notes. And say hi. Let us love on you. Let us encourage you. And if we can pray with you, let us know. Again, find us on Instagram and Facebook. Look for The Gundam Watch. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay devoted.
Peace and love.